Imagine building a fashion empire so massive that even Bernard Arnault, the richest man on earth, couldn't buy it. Now imagine being so rich, so untouchably powerful, that you could give away a $7 billion chunk of it to your gardener. Yes, your gardener. That's exactly what Nicolas Puig, one of the heirs to the Hermès fortune, is trying to do. In his 80s and childless, Puig is reportedly attempting to adopt his longtime gardener, a man of Moroccan descent, and name him as his heir. If successful, this would redirect billions away from the Hermès family foundation and straight into the hands of a man who, until recently, was trimming hedges in the backyard. But this isn't just about one bizarre inheritance plan. The real story is how the Hermès family built and protected a $200 billion empire in an industry ruled by mergers and takeovers. So how did a family of saddle makers become one of the richest dynasties on earth? And more importantly, how have they managed to keep it in the family for 6 straight generations? To understand that, we need to go all the way back to a German orphan who moved to Paris with nothing but a leather toolkit. It's easy to miss the richest family in fashion because they want it that way. While names like Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and Chanel scream for attention, the Hermès family whispers. Yet behind the quiet is control of one of the most valuable companies in the world, a $200 billion fortress of leather, silk, and silence. At the center is the Dumas family, direct descendants of the founder. They don't run flashy ad campaigns or throw wild parties, but they do own over 66% of Hermès International, making them one of the wealthiest dynasties in Europe. Richer than the Ford family, the Gucci heirs, and even the Rothschilds, at least on paper. Their wealth isn't scattered across hundreds of assets. It's concentrated, precise, and quietly compounding, tied to a single luxury brand that's defied every fashion trend for almost 200 years. And in an era where private jets and Instagram flexes are the norm, the Hermès heirs do something strange. They disappear. They rarely give interviews. They rarely show up. But their names appear on the Forbes billionaire list like a family crest. Axel Dumas, the discreet CEO. Pierre-Alexis Dumas, the artistic director. Dozens more sit quietly behind family holding companies. Unlike fashion brands owned by conglomerates like LVMH or Kering, Hermès is still very much a family business, and that's by design. Because for the Hermès family, control is everything. But what makes this brand so profitable? And why do the rich treat Hermès bags like financial assets instead of accessories? We're about to pull back the curtain on one of the most brilliant luxury business models of all time. Most companies try to sell more. Hermès makes more money by selling less. At first glance, that sounds insane. But Hermès operates on a rule that breaks almost every traditional business law: manufactured scarcity. While most luxury brands flood the market with seasonal drops and celebrity endorsements, Hermès does the opposite. They limit production on purpose. A Hermès Birkin isn't just expensive because of its craftsmanship. It's expensive because you can't simply walk into a store and buy one. You need a relationship with the brand, a purchase history, maybe a little luck. The result? A $10,000 handbag can't be bought. It must be earned. And on the resale market, prices can double, triple, or even reach $500,000 for rare editions. It's not a fashion label. It's an investment class. This is the core of the Hermès money machine. Each item is made by hand, sometimes taking up to 18 hours per bag. Their craftsmen train for years before ever stitching a Birkin. Their factories are not in sweatshop hubs, but in France, run like artisan workshops. They burn unsold inventory rather than discount it, protecting the aura of exclusivity at all costs. And this exclusivity doesn't just inflate desire, it inflates margins. Hermès enjoys operating profit margins that rival Apple and LVMH, routinely over 35%. That means for every $100 they make in sales, more than $35 is profit. That's unheard of in fashion. But perhaps the most brilliant detail is this: Hermès never chase trends. While other fashion houses scramble to stay relevant, Hermès keeps releasing the same scarves, bags, and belts year after year. The designs don't age, they appreciate. They've made scarcity into an art form. But none of this would have been possible without one man, a German-born orphan who arrived in Paris with nothing but a dream and a gift for leather. Next, we go back to the very beginning. Before the $10,000 handbags, the billion-dollar shareholdings, and the battles with LVMH, there was a man who stitched saddles by hand in a backroom shop on a muddy Paris street. Thierry Hermès was born in 1801 in Krefeld, Germany, the son of a French father and German mother. By the age of 20, he was an orphan. War and disease had swept through Europe, leaving him alone. He moved to Paris not with a dream of fashion, but with a very specific skill: leatherworking. In 1837, he opened a small workshop at 38 Rue Basse-du-Rempart, near the Madeleine district. It wasn't glamorous, he wasn't rich. He made harnesses and saddles for the French elite, the kind of handcrafted functional gear needed by carriage drivers and equestrians. But what set him apart was obsession with quality. Thierry wasn't just a leather worker, he was an artisan. Every strap, every buckle, every stitch had to meet his standards. He only used the finest hides. His clients weren't walking in for fashion statements. They came for reliability, for prestige, for items that would last for decades. His workshop earned a reputation for producing the finest equestrian goods in France. Royalty noticed. By the mid-1800s, Hermès had won several medals at the Universal Exhibitions in Paris. But Thierry Hermès never lived to see the transformation of his humble saddle shop into a global empire. He died in 1878, still a master saddler, known only among Europe's carriage class. It would be up to his descendants to take that quiet excellence and turn it into power. And it started with a decision that changed everything: to stop serving horses and start serving humans. When Thierry Hermès died in 1878, the company he left behind was still small, prestigious but niche. Luxury saddles for Europe's elite. But the world was changing fast. The horse was no longer king. Enter Charles-Émile Hermès, Thierry's son. He didn't just inherit his father's leather tools, he inherited his father's eye for quality and an instinct for timing. In the late 1800s, Charles-Émile moved the Hermès workshop to 24 Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré, a strategic location that remains the brand's flagship store to this day. But the real pivot came with Émile-Maurice Hermès, Thierry's grandson. Émile-Maurice wasn't interested in merely polishing saddles. He wanted to reinvent the family business. By the early 1900s, as cars replaced carriages and industrialization swept through France, the market for saddles began to collapse. Most leather artisans went bankrupt. Hermès didn't. Instead, Émile-Maurice did something bold. He expanded into handbags, luggage, and accessories, luxury items for the modern traveler, not just the equestrian elite. One of his breakthroughs came after a trip to Canada, where he discovered the zipper, a novel invention at the time. When he brought it back to France, Hermès became the first French company licensed to use a zipper, and even marketed it as La Fermeture Éclair, the lightning fastener. From saddles to zippers, the transformation had begun. In 1922, Émile-Maurice introduced Hermès' first leather handbag, inspired by his wife's complaints about not finding one she liked. That bag would evolve into the Kelly bag, famously named after Princess Grace of Monaco, turning a practical accessory into an object of legend. Under Émile-Maurice's leadership, Hermès introduced scarves, watches, ties, and began building what would later be recognized as the brand's iconic orange packaging. But perhaps the most important move came in 1951, when the business passed to Robert Dumas, Émile-Maurice's son-in-law, not by blood, but by marriage. Robert Dumas would carry Hermès into its next phase, a family business run like a secret society, one where control stayed in the bloodline or was married into it. That tradition would protect them for decades, until the world's richest man came knocking. By the mid-20th century, Hermès had grown far beyond saddles. But the company's most powerful asset wasn't its leather or silk or prestige, it was the family rule. Hermès was, and still is, one of the last great luxury houses to be tightly held by its founding family. For nearly 200 years, ownership and leadership stayed exclusively within the bloodline or through marriage. No outsiders, no dilution, no corporate takeovers. It was a fortress built on legacy. But in 2010, that fortress was breached. Without warning, Bernard Arnault, the billionaire CEO of LVMH, the world's largest luxury empire, announced that he had quietly acquired over 17% of Hermès shares through a network of shell companies and financial derivatives. It was a stealth move, legal, ruthless, and very close to a hostile takeover. Arnault had already absorbed Dior, Louis Vuitton, Fendi, and Bulgari. Now he wanted Hermès. But the family saw it as an act of war. What happened next is studied in business schools today. The Hermès family responded by creating a secret weapon, H51, a private holding company made up of over 50 family members who collectively pooled their shares into a locked vault, making it legally impossible for outsiders to gain control. The move was airtight, strategic, and executed in silence. The French press dubbed it the Battle of the Titans. Arnault backed off, Hermès remained independent, and the family rule survived another generation. But the drama wasn't just about shares, it was about philosophy. To the Hermès family, fashion isn't a product, it's a legacy, and they weren't going to let a corporate giant dilute 6 generations of craftsmanship in the name of scale. Even today, Hermès board members are mostly family descendants. Axel Dumas, the current CEO, is the 6th generation heir. Artistic director, also a Dumas. This isn't nepotism, it's the plan, and it worked. Because in an industry ruled by fast fashion and mega brands, Hermès did something unthinkable. They stayed small, on purpose, and somehow became bigger than everyone else. Next, we reveal how Hermès went global, and how their empire quietly became worth more than Coca-Cola, Disney, or McDonald's. In a world obsessed with scale, Hermès chose control. While other fashion brands expanded through licensing deals, flashy logos, and influencer campaigns, Hermès doubled down on what made them different: scarcity, silence, surgical precision. And the result? Today, Hermès is one of the most valuable luxury brands on the planet. Its market value? Over $200 billion. That's more than Nike, more than Disney, more than McDonald's and Coca-Cola combined. The company operates in over 45 countries with flagship stores in Paris, Tokyo, New York, Shanghai, and Dubai. But unlike other global fashion houses, Hermès owns nearly all of its boutiques. No third-party franchises, no outsourcing of control. Everything, from the stitching of a bag to the architecture of a storefront, is designed in-house and overseen by the family. Each product is still handmade in small French ateliers by artisans who often specialize in just one item, like gloves or belts, for their entire career. And they're not just selling luxury, they're selling timelessness. The average Hermès customer doesn't chase trends, they transcend them. And that positioning has made Hermès almost immune to economic downturns. During COVID-19, while most fashion houses took massive hits, Hermès stayed profitable. When inflation hit luxury markets, Hermès simply raised prices. And customers kept buying. In fact, their profits in 2023 hit an all-time high, over 4.3 billion euros. Behind all of it is still the family. Axel Dumas, great-great-great-grandson of Thierry Hermès, leads the company as CEO. Pierre-Alexis Dumas, another descendant, shapes the brand's creative direction. And the rest of the clan? Still heavily involved through the H51 holding company, with no plans of ever selling. They don't need to. Thoughtful. As of today, the Hermès family is worth over $150 billion, making them richer than the Waltons of Walmart, richer than the Kochs, richer than almost every other fashion dynasty in the world. They own the world's most elusive brand. They control the supply chain from thread to boutique. They defeated the world's richest man in a corporate war, and they did it all by refusing to grow fast and choosing to grow forever. From orphan saddle maker to the rulers of modern luxury, the Hermès story is unlike any other. They fought off takeovers, rejected modern marketing, and refused to sacrifice craftsmanship for profit. In a world obsessed with speed, Hermès moves slowly, and somehow that's exactly what makes them unstoppable. In a world of hype and noise, Hermès remains an empire of silence. No ads, no influencers, no discounts. Just one family, 6 generations deep, guarding a $200 billion legacy, stitched in leather and sealed with secrecy. If you found this story fascinating, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more untold history.